Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world, with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
The new Pope Francis kicked off the red shoes and put on workers' boots, eschewed a limousine for a blue Ford Focus, and hasn't spent a night in the papal palace, preferring the Spartan boarding house he'd stayed in before his election. He has emerged as the leading critic of contemporary capitalism in the world, even going to Davos to lash the selfishness and greed of the world's ruling elite.
The world's first Latin American Pope, where almost 500 million Catholics reside, and the first Jesuit, is being received everywhere he goes as a kind of superstar and appears to have lifted the reputation of the Catholic Church, which had been on the floor over corruption, child abuse and 100 scandals.
The charisma he radiates contrasts vividly with the cold Germanic purity of his predecessor, Pope Benedict. And as he crosses the first anniversary of his papacy, we're discussing the superstar Pope with Catholic thinker and activist, Dr. Declan Hayes. Declan, one man doesn't make a team, but Lionel Messi is a superstar even in the Barcelona team. Would you give credit to the theory that this superstar Pope has lifted the Catholic Church off the floor?
No, not really. If you go back to another so-called superstar, Pope John Paul II, he really fed into the American agenda. And in fact, Rush Limbaugh, who is attacking the current Pope, says that he badly compares to Pope John Paul II. And he puts Pope John Paul in with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. Now, you can figure that company out yourself. Pope John Paul was, if you like, a tough Pole, and he set out with a mission, and some of the mission he did achieve. The current Pope does not like being called a superstar, and in fact, from a Catholic viewpoint, and if you like, you come and I come from the same robust general Catholic background, shall we say, and I would like to see more of that robustness and more of the best elements of the robust community, not individual, that the two of us come from. And in fact, if we just look at your own history a long time ago, what robustness was there? Brother Wilfred, a superstar by anybody's measurement, he went to Glasgow and he started a team which still gives a lot of respect to a lot of people around the world. And if you like, that superstar was the beginning of the diversity that we have in Britain at the moment. And Brother Wilfred, Pope, the current Pope, they can only lead. It's really other people have to follow.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. But just judge where we were a year ago. Benedict was, if not unpopular, then really rather mediocre. The church was enveloped in scandals, some of which, of course, I agree, it's still enveloped in. Its reputation couldn't really have fallen very much lower. Now, triple the numbers are turning out for papal events with Francis. And he does seem to have a certain something, just like Messi, no?
Messi certainly has a certain something. It's a pity his grandmother doesn't come from Ireland. Now, if you go back a year, yes, that stuff about the child sex abuse was going on and is still going on. And in fact, one of the super cardinals he's bringing to supposedly sort out the Vatican, George Pell, who I knew from Australia, Australians say that they're only taking him out of Australia because of the whole child sex abuse stuff there that's brewing up. Now, George Pell is supposed to sort out the economics of the Vatican, which is a mess, as bad as their media. And I don't think a superstar, I don't think Messi or Balotelli or the Pope or anybody else can do this. It takes a very concerted effort, and I think one very good thing he has done in that respect is he's bringing in outside people, the likes of McKinsey, to look at this and to try to sort out some of the, in his own words, the leprosy of the Vatican.
He definitely doesn't live as a superstar. As we all know, he lives a very sober lifestyle. But everywhere he goes, he's being received as such. You know, the followers are overwhelmingly enthusiastic about him because they can relate to him as he does relate to them, the common people, right, the poor in specific.
Okay, yeah, but the question is, what does enthusiasm bring to the party, right? You actually need organisation. Now, if we look at the Middle East, the Palestinian or the Syrian thing or anywhere else, there's a lot of great people there on the ground doing a lot of great work, but they actually need organised support behind him. Now, I was in I was in Rome there about 2 weeks ago. I called into the Palestinian embassy and some other places. I hadn't time to go to the Vatican, and there's priests and nuns all over the place in Rome. And the question is, and Pope Francis is asking it himself, what are all you guys doing here in Rome? Why aren't you out, you know, working in the fields, kind of, you know, in Africa, in England, and everywhere else?
Bethlehem, something very important to you as well as me and Gayatri. In Bethlehem, Mary would not she would have had to give birth to Jesus at a checkpoint. The Palestinian Christians and Syrian Christians, which is a slightly separate matter, but nonetheless crucial. Pope should be doing a bit more on that, no?
The Pope is actually going to Israel, Palestine in May. There's several things he could do in Bethlehem. One is to go up to that checkpoint at 3 o'clock in the morning to see the Muslims and the Christians going in for work. And I'm not exaggerating here. I've been there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the nearest thing I can think of that is the French slave labourers of World War II. That's what they look like. You have to beware of Greeks bearing gifts, and you also have to beware of Irish people bearing gifts. I have a little present for you here, Gayatri. It's olive oil soap made by Palestinians. I bought this in Taipei from French nuns who are doing a lot of good work. Here is packaging from a different Christian group in the Holy Land. And these people need, if he wants to do something symbolic, what he could do is go in and buy 20 million bars of soap. If the church has to have a mission, right, it is certainly, the mission should be not killing the Christians and Muslims of the Middle East as a lot of these right-wing people want to do. The mission has to be something else.
Well, the biggest killer is capitalism, of course. That's the biggest killer the world has ever known. It's killing poor people in every continent all the time.
Yeah, but that's an abstraction, right? The bullets read US of A, right? And the Pope and the Catholic Church has to actively oppose this, not perhaps, if you like, totally physically, but a lot of symbolic stuff can be done, and the Pope is in an excellent position to do that. But there are a lot of people in the Vatican and everywhere else who want him essentially singing from the same, more or less the same hymn sheet as Rush Limbaugh and everybody else, and that's his real challenge. And he has started well there by trying to sideline a lot of those people, but he does have his work cut out. Before Geneva II, for example, he'd invited, or somebody had invited, I think it was the French, had invited Tony Blair to discuss solving.
I've got that here. One of the great paradoxes of our age, that a man who the last Pope asked, or the previous but one, begged him not to invade Iraq and essentially ineluctably cause the slaughter of thousands of Iraqi Christians as a result of the American and British invasion. And Tony Blair laughed in his face and walked out and did it. How on earth is it possible that Tony Blair is such a welcome guest in the Roman Catholic Church?
Well, I suppose Pinochet has a soul, would be the argument, and so has Tony Blair, and probably, thank God, it's not your soul. Or or my soul. But, you know, the power of prayer does work. And we all prayed fervently, and luckily Mr. Sharon died, so Tony Blair went to Sharon's funeral instead of showing up at the Vatican.
Much better place for him.
Which, much better, but could you imagine how the messages that would have sent out to the Christians and the Muslims of the Middle East? And when the Pope goes to Palestine, Israel, again, people want him, the Israeli government want him to sing a certain message, and they do have a lot of power, but he has to try to sing the message that the Christians and the other people of goodwill in the Middle East and throughout the world want him to sing. He has to build up a robust Catholicism, or a thing that's not afraid to speak its viewpoint. Now I know it's a kind of a family affair today with the Hayes family, right? but you know, Bob Crow was not afraid to say what he said, right? Bob Crow would get up on his pulpit and he expelled people of the BNP from it, right? He actually expelled leading members of the Labour Party. Okay, now he walked the walk, so it's easy enough to talk the talk, but walking the walk is important as well.
He's certainly not walking them in the last Pope's red shoes, but in a worker's boots. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. It's been a pleasure disagreeing with you. Thanks very much, Declan Hayes. Coming up after the break, trade union bells were muffled this week upon the death at just 52 of one of Britain's great working class leaders. We'll be talking about Bob Crow with his friend and another great union man, leader of Britain's communication workers, Billy Hayes.
If you're killing women and children continuously, knowingly for so many years, it is war crime.
Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." Obama is today telling me I have a drone.
The drones have not caused a huge number of civilian casualties. For the most part, they have been very precise precision strikes against Al-Qaeda.
This small body on the ground is a little girl, and just next to her is a little boy of 8.
We do some operations in Afghanistan, yes.
And also, which other countries?
Afghanistan's the only one that I can confirm that we are operating in.
In Yemen?
Afghanistan's the only country that I can confirm.
And Pakistan?
Afghanistan's the only country I can confirm.
Not say sorry for this.
Bob Crow, the leader of Britain's railway workers, merchant seamen and other transport staffs, was Britain's most successful union leader. His members loved him and their bosses loathed him.
And the media hated them even more. If Bob Crow had woken up on Tuesday morning, he would have read yet another attack in the right-wing press. This week on his salary, the week before on his holidays, and before that he had stayed in the house he had stayed in since he was an ordinary railwayman himself.
Media hostility was unremitting, proving he constituted a clear and present danger to the way things are, and a powerful advocate of how things could be. To discuss Bob Crow's life and what the meaning of the well of affection brimming over since his death means is another powerful union leader with many of the same attributes. He's Billy Hayes, leader of the Union of Communication Workers. Billy, thanks for coming on board the Sputnik. The meaning of Bob Crow's death we'll come to in a minute, but his life was pretty spectacular, short and spectacular. And the impact that he made as a union leader, well, it's hard to compare him with any other.
No, he was probably Britain's most famous trade union leader, and he was charismatic. He was, you know, everybody knew Bob was. But he was also a great guy. He was also a good human being. You know, he had all the attributes of what it is to be a leader. He was friendly, he was kind. I never heard him once rubbish anyone individually, but he fought for the people that he represented, and he fought very well, and he was seen to be very effective as a trade union leader.
Union membership in his union grew by 30% in the 12 years he was the leader, and the wages, I don't know what the percentage increase was, but everyone famously talks about the London Underground driver on more than £50,000 a year. Heaven forbid that any blue-collar worker should earn more than £50,000 a year. Of course, he had some good luck in the sense that he was representing a section of workers with a monopoly on their services. But do you think that his style of negotiating, his style of confrontation, if you like, has something to offer other union leaders?
Well, you know, Thatcher said weakness invites aggression. Well, Bob took it as a word in some ways. You know, he knew that he was to cower and back off, that you know, you would be treated badly. And you know, yes, he had some luck in terms of London Underground. Let's not forget, as you say, he represented seafarer workers. That's a much more difficult. But even low-paid cleaners, he represented them well. He was prepared to fight, and because the establishment, if you like, knew he was prepared to fight, they dealt with him. You know, he was unapologetic for improving the living standards and the conditions of his people, and you know, he's to be applauded for that.
He died on the eve, literally, of the 30th anniversary of the miners' strike. The defeat of the miners marked a very important turning point, as we both know, turning point down a road that has not been good. Do you think the death of Bob Crow will be a turning point too? Will there be any other Bob Crows?
I think there's going to be other people. You know, Bob had a certain style that was a Bob Crow style. It was a one-off. But the idea that you represent people, you know, and fiercely represent them, the government itself shows, by its own figures, if you're in a trade union, your pay is likely to be, on average, about 18% what it is in an organised sector. And the main reason why people, you know, maybe not join unions is fear. But Bob showed, you join a strong trade union and you take action, and you will improve a lot of working people. He left a lasting legacy. That was the paying conditions of the people he represented.
Of course, his union was expelled from the Labour Party, more or less same time as me, and for similar reasons, even though it was the Railway Workers' Union that actually proposed the motion which established the Labour Party in the first place. Bob supported with the political funds of the union, freed from constraint once the Labour had expelled him, some political formations that haven't done well, and some that were positively wrong. I mean, I think, for example, his no to EU stand was the wrong stand. But at least, in a way, he was able to creatively decide on behalf of the union where the funds of the union should go. Are unions going to be involved in politics in their own right more and more in the way that Bob pioneered?
I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. I mean, as you say, George, the formations, the reason why they were expelled, which was affiliating, as I understand it, to the Scottish Socialist Party, I mean, that fell apart for lots of different reasons. I think the problem is, you know, there's a lack of political representation in this country, and at the moment, the only party that, even now, with all the changes, is the Labour Party. Now that, you know, and that's in this country, in this particular point in history. You know, I don't think there's much alternative for trade unions other than to get this government out. And the only party that's capable of doing that in the next 420 days is the Labour Party. But I think the problem for the Labour Party and for the political class in this country, Bob, you know, was elected by ordinary people, and there's an underrepresentation of ordinary people in this country. Even in the Labour Party, when, you know, we had two wings of the party, Ernest Bevin, who gave us the atomic bomb, and Narin Bevin, who gave us the National Health Service. They were from, you know, working class stock, as it were. Now, you don't have to be a horny hand of soil just to be an MP, but we do need to have a bit more of a locus in the lives of ordinary people. And I do think there's a bit of a political crisis in that respect, in terms of working class representation. I don't think the avenue that Bob chose was the right one. And similarly with the EU, I didn't agree with him on the EU. But Bob's, you know, mission was to represent people. And the first thing we must do as trade unionists is pull ourselves up and represent the people who look to us to looking after them in the workplace. The problem that we've got in society at the moment is that, you know, the political class just don't seem to get it.
Now, we know that the right-wing media attacked him enormously, almost on a daily rate. Now, Bob Crow appears like a very strong man, but do you think it affected him in any way negatively, or was he able to brush it away and carry on?
You know, Bob was like every one of us, you know. I'm sure there were times when when they attacked his family or attacked his home, you know, or followed him around. I mean, I've had similar, but not on the same scale as Bob, because of Bob's notoriety in some ways. But I'm sure it affected him. You know, Narin Bevin once said, the Tories are soft on the outside and hard inside. And working class people are hard on the outside and soft inside. And that was true of Bob. You know, for all his bluster and all his tenacity and determination, you know, he was quite a gentle and a very intelligent man.
Billy, I mean, the point you've identified is undoubtedly true, that only Labour can get the Tories out. That I agree with. I hope Labour wins. But what kind of Labour is a big question now. What are the unions going to do to continue to back Labour? Yes. Continue to fund Labour? Yes. But what can the unions do to try and make Labour more representative of the working class in the way that Bob Crow represented the working class?
That's a big question, and I don't think there's a single answer. I think the first thing that we have to do as trade unionists is represent the people who we're paid to look after. That's the first point, and install a confidence that was there. When you became politically active, and I think we can't underestimate on this anniversary of the miners' strike how much of an impact that has had on workers' self-confidence and working class self-confidence. And at the moment, the only show in town really is the Tory government. I have two kind of scenarios. How are you going to feel if the Tories get a majority at the next election? And if Labour win, you know, there'll be some trepidation about that, but we know there's a bit of space in which to operate. You know, Tariq Ali famously said there's only 6% difference sometimes between the Labour and the Tories, but we operate in that 6%. I think there is an issue about underrepresentation, and we're trying to do what we can as a trade union, you know, in terms of ensuring representation. But, you know, I've got the general election results going back to 1892, and apart from the 1930s, and apart from individual by-elections, and, you know, yours is the case in Point George, there's no evidence that parties to the left of the Labour Party, so-called left at times, have done well. I mean, at the Eastleigh by-election, the Trade Union Socialist Coalition got less votes than Elvis Loves Pets party. You know, and it's only when you got a particular I think what we need to address also is the change in composition of Britain. You know, it's much more multicultural. So I think it's slow, patient work, and I'd never say now and forever for all time. We've seen places like Germany, where the Die Linke, you know, although it dropped its vote at the last election.
Yeah. Still got 70
It's
plus
still got,
MPs,
it's still, exactly, I know the particular reason, but Syriza in Greece, at the moment, on current polls, it's getting a better vote than the Greek Social Democratic Party. So it's never for always, for all time, but in these particular circumstances, I would say the main priority is making sure that the Tories are not returned at the next election. And
well, Bob Crow would certainly agree with us on that last point, if not on all of the others. Billy Hayes, trade union leader, real leader of the working people, remembering the late Bob Crow. Now it's your turn to tell us what you think in the social media review roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
I asked the people what they thought about superstar Pope Francis. Dynamite Media says, not a superstar, but a friend of the poor, humble pastor and an enemy of the warmongers. Read his anti-capitalist Evangelii Gaudium. To which Farah Ali argues further that he's definitely a step in the right direction, especially in view of his predecessor. But he's not a superstar. For religious leaders, such conduct should be the norm, not the exception. Something very wrong with the system of appointment that is so inconsistent.
Well, I mean, it all sounds like a superstar to me. But the numbers, I mean, the old song, 40,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. Audiences have tripled in 12 months. When Benedict went anywhere, they really had to work hard even to get the faithful on parade. The others were not interested. With this Pope, the faithful are flooding out and non-Catholics are listening for the first time in a long time to what a Pope has to say.
I think we are bigger fans of the Pope Francis than Declan and all our followers.
That's definitely definitely appears to be the case.
About Bob Crow, the late Bob Crow, Andy Gilchrist says it's a major setback. He would tell us to pick up the ball and run again. RMT will never replace him, but run we will. And David Thomas says we value rare folk like him, widely recognized for integrity and commitment to his socialist purpose. Decent.
Decent, indeed. One of the most significant things about the death of Bob Crow is how much sadness there has been in the country about it. If you'd believed the newspapers, Bob Crow was the most hated man in Britain.
Yeah, and yet,
except he wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't, because people knew that in him they saw an authentic working class leader who may have views which they didn't agree with, may have taken actions which they didn't agree with, but they never doubted the sincerity of his motives. He had no master other than the working people who elected him. And my goodness, did he represent them well.
And that's all for this week.
Which sadly means that's the end of the show.
You know, you can reach us on Twitter at RT_Sputnik, and on Facebook you can like us on Sputnik on Russia Today. That's it for me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.